When you started Project Up, I was quite new on LinkedIn and somebody told me about this. And at that time, I was a very I wasn't a good writer and all of it. So I just applied randomly and I got rejected. And
Oops.
and today here I am with you. So it feels amazing. Vardhan Shekhawat is one of the most emerging talents of our country in the field of public policy research and entrepreneurship. He has worked with different NGOs at an international front. He's also the founder of Projecta, which is a non-for-profit organization in partnership with UNESCO Delhi. In this particular podcast, we've talked about the emerging field of public policy and the budding policy makers in our country. Enjoy. So, hi Vardhan, thank you for coming on Honest Discussion Series. This is your host, Rasleen Grover. I want to begin by asking that back in those days, like 3, 4 years earlier, public policy was not that predominantly known as a career option. So, how did you think that I'm going to go and choose this career and this is what I'm going to do in future?
I think that's a very nice question. And before I begin, thanks a lot for having me here, Rasleen. Um, I think it feels really great to be on a podcast, especially this one, because while I was trying to figure out the nature of the podcast and so on and so forth, particularly found it interesting. So once again, thanks a lot. Um, when I talk about public policy, one thing about the discipline in particular is that it's highly interdisciplinary. So it's not like natural sciences that you have to particularly specialize in one thing, understand mathematics, so on and so forth. So if I have to talk about the policy industry 3, 4 years back, one thing that I know for certain is that it's been highly interdisciplinary. And for me as a person, I wasn't of the mind that I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna do this, and this particular thing is public policy or whatever I'm consulting. That is what public policy actually means. So I entered the sector totally unknown and totally oblivious to what public policy actually is. And to be honest, it was 2 years back when I got to know about, when I rather studied about public policy. And that was the time when I figured out that, oh, this is what I'm actually doing. And this is what the subject entails to, what all, are the nuances of the subject. And, that's how my personal journey has been. But, with like a lot of institutions coming up,
Yes.
talking about public policy, so on and so forth, I think uh, newer generation, they and like people rather who study this discipline, they'll be more sorted in the times to come.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel it is one of the most emerging fields in our country. But I feel one thing which lacks in this particular career, taking it up as a career, is that it doesn't offer you a good pay scale, which any other profession would. So, how should really government go about with this particular career? Because see, if there are good policymakers, there will be good policies in the country, and it's going to eventually benefit to the citizen. So they should definitely come up with something which can help them sustain a good lifestyle as well.
That is true. I think there are different elements to look at, the situation that you have described. One is from the perspective of governance. When I look at it from the perspective of governance, something that comes to my mind is policy making by external players who are like outside governance. Let's say the think tanks or consulting firms or even the civil society. These in India, they play a limited role in influencing policy. We have to talk about the consulting projects that Project Up has personally picked. I'd feel the kind of impact that we have tried to create, it remains external to the primary policy cycle. Now, primary policy cycle is heavily influenced by your civil servants, then your other types of bureaucracy, the legislatures, and all of that. So, when I look at it from the governance perspective, the government is sorted when it comes to public policy. They have they have Niti Aayog, they have
Yeah.
subsidiary committees, they have parliamentary committees. So when you talk about it from a governance perspective, public policy is essentially going within the institutional structure of the government and thereafter making policies. Now, when you look at it from a perspective of a private player, someone who's outside the government, then that is a different perspective altogether. What that entails to is you can either go in an NGO work as
Okay.
within the civil society, try to create difference on ground grassroots level, and other is you can indulge into consulting.
Yeah.
Followed by that, there is also the private sector, so you can work as a public policy officer or something like that in, let's say, Apple or Amazon,
Yeah.
stuff like
So
that.
recently I came across this term public policy consultancy firms, which I wasn't aware earlier. So there are a lot of private organizations which have this department for public policy, but it's still limited to the legal department. As legal department is still there in
Yeah.
every corporate sector, but public policy is still like not that vastly popular as such. But I feel eventually it's going to be there in all the companies because they have to really figure out the policies and the business rules and everything with their whatever things they're doing in the company. Okay, so I also want to ask you about your project up, which you have started, and how did you really think of that idea? Because research, I recently read an article in Hindu as well that research and development, if they want to create an ecosystem in India for that. So yeah, just enlighten us with that.
All right. So, personally speaking, when I graduated college, I was with two perspectives. I was sure that I want to pursue public policy, nothing apart from that. And when I look at it from two distinct perspectives, one was let's go ahead and crack the IAS, IFS, and then
Yeah.
directly influence policy. Um, for some reason, that I didn't find that to be my cup of tea.
Same,
The
same.
second option, the second option which I saw was influencing policy from a civil society perspective, and the third one, which was not really apparent that time, was to consult as a private player. So, private player, as in with a corporate. So, when I look at it, from a civil society perspective, one thing that was really essential to me was conducting good quality research. Many a times, not really outright saying that government their records or the government data is essentially manipulated, something like that. But a lot of times good data is needed to come up with good research and thereafter implement good policies. So that was one lack which I personally saw in the policy space, which we tried to fulfill through Project Up. um, One, and two was, I personally feel, as many youthful policy inputs you put in the policy space, the better it's going to be. And that is only out of spirit. I cannot rationally justify that argument. That's only purely out of spirit. So another essential behind coming up with the research, project within Project Up was to train a lot of young people in the policy space. So right now, in our partnership with UNESCO New Delhi, our target is to train 50 policy researchers almost every month, and we're doing that. And
Yeah.
trust me, it's the most rewarding experience when you have young people saying that yes, this is what I want to work on, and this is what I'm going to do, and it, and I'm equipped with the necessary skills to do that. I think that is something that drives me within Project Up. Really take things forward.
So you're
I think,
also a social entrepreneur, if I may call you that. You are, right?
yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah.
fancy term.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but if somebody like me who wants to set up a project or like a think tank like yours, so how should one approach that thing? Because it is a tedious process to actually come up with your own startup and everything and form a team and then eventually build a complete ecosystem.
All right, this answer is going to be slightly long,
Yeah.
so bear with me on that.
No.
Number one, one thing that lacks in India is, again, because there is no public policy space, there is no given ecosystem to understand how you can do something there. What and In contradiction to that, there is a lot of startup trends. Government has various schemes. Every college has an incubation center. It's going to help startups to do something, get investment. So, not to say that having a startup is relatively easy than having a social enterprise or an NGO, but the point is that at the moment it is so trending that you have a lot of support, if not practically, but at least you have a lot of support in theory. When you look at making an NGO or a social enterprise, there are a lot of challenges. So the startup challenges are there anyway. Plus,
Mm.
you have challenges of no one being there to guide you, telling you, do this, do that, do that. Second is you do not get a mentor who can. I personally did not get a mentor who was like, yeah, do this. That's how you go with the registration process. That's how you get a PAN card, or that's how go ahead, open a bank account. So these challenges are there. One,
Yeah.
two. If you look at the structure of NGOs in India, you will realize that it's vastly different than a startup. So
Okay.
if you have a Section 8 company, if you have a society, if you have a trust, in all these three cases, it works in absolute distinction, a huge dichotomy between a company and a social enterprise within any three segments. So
Mm.
there is no guidance on that as such, how to create my society's bylaws, all of that. So
Mm.
that is a big problem, and no one essentially guides you. So the third problem becomes the problem of funding.
Yeah.
Now, startup में investors हैं, and they will, happily, if your idea is good, you
Yeah.
might just get a good investment. So, one of my people I was speaking with in Project Hub only, he said that if you have a good idea today, money is not the problem. People
Mm.
are there to invest in your idea. On the flip side, when I look at social enterprises in India and not outside, specifically in India, funding becomes a problem. I personally come from a very modest background, and when I started Project Up, I was not in a position of telling my parents that give me even 5,000 rupees so that I can buy some scarves or buy something for the kids, and because I was not in a position to say that if you give me 5,000, I'll return you 10,000,
Mm.
because it's that's how the dynamics work. So that was a big problem. So funding, no resources, lack of guidance becomes a huge challenge in terms of coming up with a social enterprise
Yeah.
vis-a-vis a
Because there is
company.
no
So
profit making in it, right? So you're
yeah,
basically helping people.
that's true.
Yeah. So what is like the main difference you see in India and abroad with the social enterprise? Uh,
That is a really good question.
yeah.
So I worked with governments in Australia. Currently, I get my contractual employment from African Development University, which is in Niger,
Okay.
and I'm working in Project Up. I've looked at a couple of research dynamics in Egypt. So I think the first, essential of that question is, where in the world are we talking about? If you're talking about Europe,
Uh,
the dynamics are different. US,
okay.
it's different.
Mm.
Africa, it's crazy different. So yeah.
Okay. So like US and Europe in general.
So I feel, and this is a personal opinion,
Yeah.
Europe and UK, these people, I feel they realize the importance of public policy, since a lot of the work is outsourced.
Mm.
Um, so I think the pay is better,
Absolutely.
opportunities are better. I myself am considering a PhD from abroad, so even teaching in the global north is way better in terms of pay, in terms of benefits. So if you want to teach public policy, um, the pay and other things are better there. So I think that comes down when you realize the importance of interdisciplinary research, which is a problem in India. So
And
personally, if you
how
try
should,
try,
yeah. Yeah, yeah, just
all right, no
continue.
worries.
Yeah. So
All right,
how
so I
should
was saying,
India adapt all of it?
okay, um, okay, that's actually a difficult question.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna come with the realization that
Mm.
apart from money, there are other things which actually matter. One thing in the development sector that I go by is we assess the performance of an entity, or society, or an NGO company, whatever. We assess the performance of an entity, not by income but by impact. So, and that is something that truly differentiates a company and the development sector. So, if you look at it from that perspective, the day I'm no one to really make such big statements, but I feel the day we realize that impact over income, or even treat them on an equality, um, the public policy space in India will actually bloom, and it's just a matter of time. I feel, because it's already happening. I can see it happen. So just as far as I see, 5 years, 6 years down the line, um, we can easily compete
I
with
also feel
moving on.
like even the private sector can play a vital role in this. We can collaborate with them and we can actually even make money and help people. That is what like most of the first world countries are doing, and their economies is booming and even the people are really happy. So that is what I feel India can also adapt in such a way. So, but they need to really come up with good policies, especially the private sector, so that they can adapt all of these changes in their system.
Very
I
true.
want to also ask you about the kind of international work you've done over these years, because I'm quite overwhelmed. Like as you mentioned about doing, some things with in Africa and then other countries as well. So just enlighten me with that as well.
Um, since my childhood, I was a lot into Mahatma Gandhi for some reason. And that really drew me very close to a lot of his ideas and a lot of his work that he did in Africa, which in turn made me really passionate about African development. So I was constantly on a lookout that I want to do something for Africa and I want to work there for some time. Eventually, I got a nice opportunity. That job essentially makes me teach wonderful people, and I'm incubating social enterprises there itself. So,
That's nice.
Niger, I think it's the third most poorest country in the world, and I feel it has a lot of challenges, but it's one of the most hopeful countries that I've personally been to. So, and I'm traveling again by the end of this week. So, the idea behind there is, going there is essentially to work on many more project ups, which will not only be limited to India, but even Africa, one. And two, really spread holistic education. So in the university, I also teach. And at the same time, I'm working on social enterprises with the students there. So I feel one is to create really genuine impact, and the second is education in Africa.
Mm.
So,
And
and
how do you approach such opportunities? Like, is it just online or is it through universities or something like that?
um, so I think it just when you're working, this is like a life thing that I go by.
Mm.
If you're really doing something that you love, so there was a point in my life when I missed college exams to go in the field and meet the kids. Not the best decision. I'm not asking people to do that. It's just an example of the kind of crazy passion that it actually drove me insane. And I could not even think rationally that Vardhan, go and give the exam over this. So one is that if you're really passionate about something, things just come down, and that's something that I've seen. So as I told you, could not take money from my parents for starting Project Up, but I did it regardless.
Mm.
I slept in the slum for 3 days to just understand the dynamic and how these people actually live. To a
Could
lot of
you could
observation.
you just elaborate what Project Up is doing to my audience?
Sure. So, Project Up is essentially divided into three distinct workspaces. One is policy consulting, research, training people, so on and so forth. So, we've been consulting to the National Action Plan 2020, where we were talking about manual scavenging. And we also work with the executive aid to the Home Ministry of the state, where we were talking about employment opportunities. Now we're also looking at further, extending our consulting projects and the research base itself. And on our research team, we've partnered with UNESCO and we're running a boot camp. Other than that, we have on field projects which are further divided into two. One is entirely into education. So we have a systematic plan and an education model, which I personally foresee as a revolution within the space of fieldwork.
Hmm.
So that is there, and that needs to be worked on further.
Hmm.
And then we have our social entrepreneurship projects. So those are like we're running
That's
three projects.
that's
One
insane,
is
bro.
clay pottery, so on and so forth. So
And you did it all by
that's there.
yourself, or do you have like a team?
I started by myself.
Okay.
Got a weird team at first, then got an amazing team, which is right there. Like they're like family now.
I'll just tell you about this, that when you started Project Up, I was quite new on LinkedIn and somebody told me about this. And at that time, I was a very I wasn't a good writer and all of it. So I just applied randomly and I got rejected. And
Oops.
and today here I am with you. So it feels amazing. And I also feel that I've come a long way because at that time I did not do any internship. Now I've done around 5 to 6 internships and I've written
That's
2
awesome.
research papers. Yeah. So like I feel like research is a very tedious process, but once you get into it, it's one of the most beautiful process because you're just allowing your mind to think in a particular direction, and that is the most beautiful feeling, I feel.
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
yeah, also you're finding so many recommendations, to the problem, you're giving out solutions to the government. So that is something amazing. So I just want to ask you, how should a budding researcher really approach researching?
Okay. First of all, before that, I think it's a commendable job from the time you came onto LinkedIn till now and the way
Yeah.
you've grown. So kudos to that. Uh, now coming on to the budding researcher thing, I faced a huge problem when I was in college.
Hmm.
Because even till the end of my college, no one really told me that look, Vardhan, this is how citations work,
Hmm.
or look, Vardhan, this is how you snowball a paper, or so these things, basic tips and tricks, even the very fundamentals, methodology. These things weren't told. This is not a culture in India,
Yeah,
not at least in undergraduate level.
absolutely.
There not even 10% colleges help you make a research paper, and that was a huge gap. While my friends who were abroad, they were like, oh, you don't know citations, and that really
Yeah.
pricked me at a point. And then I did online courses, started to figure stuff out by myself. And one thing that, okay, so this is not an advertisement, but I think right now there are a lot of courses or people who can help you out if you have the right resources. For
Hmm.
instance, in our boot camp, what we do is we take you through from nothing, like no background knowledge of research, to a point where we make you a published author.
Hmm.
And so I think once you have such a kickstart, it is easier to build upon that. Back when I was working on my research, I did not have that. And if at all there was something like this, I did not know. So I think not only Project Ups Bootcamp, there are a lot of other good bootcamps as well and good courses that someone can do to get a basic knowledge. So yeah.
And what kind of research your bootcamp really focuses on, qualitative or quantitative? Or is it a mix of both?
So so at the boot camp is essentially a two-way process. One is
Okay.
research,
Okay.
and the second is social emotional development of a
Okay.
person. When you
Okay.
come into the boot camp,
Hmm.
90% of the people when they leave, 90% too much, and this is a rough statistic. A majority of the people when they leave, they're actually in tears because they're so much in love with the people that they've worked with. So if I keep that perspective aside, and I just talk about solely research, we work on both qualitative and quantitative methods. Um, but most of the time, a lot of our research is based on qualitative work in the boot camp,
Hmm.
since we run on a very strict deadline, and you know
Okay.
working on the quantitative part usually takes a lot of time, but we're always open to that.
Okay, that's great. So if you're applying, like as you mentioned that you're applying for abroad, for you might consider PhD from abroad. So how should one really approach abroad admissions? Because it's very difficult and also different from Indian university admissions for masters and for PhD.
I have limited experience of applying abroad,
Okay.
but I applied to Kings. I got in.
Okay.
My CGPA was slightly low.
Okay.
So that being said, I think one of the very major things when you're applying for a master's or a PhD abroad. So since I do not have much experience in applying for a PhD, I'll talk about masters.
Mm.
Um, I I personally feel being sorted um, for the course is
Mm.
very important. So you should know what are your research interests, what do you want to actually do after the course, what really excites you, to an extent, which professor would you like to work with.
Mm.
Questions like these, which are highly academic, is something that is always preferred in a master's application. Since when you're applying for an undergrad, you can just go on with your feelings, stuff like that. I think a
Mm.
master's application is more requires you to be more sorted in terms of your career and your academics together. I think that's
Yeah,
one thing that I took back from my experience of applying.
absolutely. Great. The next question would be about how should Indian universities at a bachelor level adapt the research and development processes for their students? Because in the new education policy, they have told that they're going to focus on research a lot.
Yeah, and they removed the MPhil.
Yeah, they removed them. Yeah.
So that's a very good question. Um, so my intent, if I talk about the long-term perspective, is
Mm,
doing something like this, structural changes within the education regime.
yeah.
To start with that, I think it's a very simple thing to do, honestly. Very, very simple. You look at, okay, let me just pick up DU Political Science undergraduation course. All right. um, if you have one course wherein you do not talk about, let's say, a particular philosopher, but you
Mm,
talk about research, I think that's
mm,
way more helpful.
yeah.
I wouldn't name a philosopher, but let's say we're not talking about a certain, something that there are a lot of things which are redundant in the course. For instance, understanding, or I shouldn't be naming any philosophy or any philosopher, but yeah, there are things which can be removed, and it is very, very easy to add research methodology and basics of research in one semester, very
Mm.
easily.
Do you think they should add a research paper in their bachelor's degree? Because abroad it is very common. Usually people write research paper.
I do not think so.
Okay.
You look at public university dynamics, you will realize that a lot of people are coming from huge diversity, right? So someone's coming from UP, someone's coming from Bihar, someone's coming from Kerala, huge diversity. I personally feel not everyone is at par in terms of intellectual caliber or academia because of different circumstances that they, come from. Someone might just be studying
Absolutely.
from the best school, the other one might just, be going to one of the worst government schools in the country. But then they both meet. And when you assess a person based on their, paper that they write, I think there is an unfair advantage to the person who goes to a better school, and that's always there, regardless.
Yeah.
But still, putting in a thesis in the end of the DU degree or a public university degree is it might just have adverse effect. I don't feel that the people in India or the students in India are ready for that at the undergraduate level. But sure, they should be taught, and it can be worked as the way it already is. So
Like
the way
as they,
examinations go.
yeah. So like as they mentioned, a 3-year degree can be extendable for like another year, and then that particular year you can write your own research paper. That is what it was mentioned in NEP as well, that it can be a
Yeah, I think
4-year
that's
degree. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll put you at par to the United States in terms of getting academic credits. So I think it works.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because they don't usually count the 3-year degree, I guess, because they,
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's a problem.
yeah, that's a big problem. And this is the last question which I want to ask you. That is, I also wish to get into public policy and do something like you, and you've done some tremendous work, but I'm still a boomer, I feel, in this particular field.
Likewise,
So, no, I still feel I need to learn a lot. I need to really get into the nuances of the particular field. But how should I or any other person who is just at the beginning level approach this field, and even the research field in general?
I think before I answer that, I think there are a lot of people out there
Hmm.
who have done tremendous work within public policy and development sphere. And even just like you, I'm also just starting. So, just be like 2, 3 years ahead. That's it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that being said, uh, I personally feel beginning to understand public policy comes with a lot of reading and a lot of
Hmm.
research. When you
Hmm.
know your basics, so
Yeah.
models of analysis, understanding regression, knowing citations, research methodology, everything. If you're if you have substance in terms of wisdom and knowledge, I think that's the first step of becoming a public policy professional.
Hmm.
When you understand and talk to people, just like exactly what you're doing, that really works. And third thing that I've personally seen is networking is huge in public policy space.
Absolutely.
If you know the right people, they can very well guide you to right opportunities. They can very well tell you,
They
the
also work
nuances.
as references in a lot of companies and in a
Yeah,
lot of government offices as well. And one
yeah,
of the sole reason why somebody told me to join LinkedIn is that you will build a great network, and it's been around 4 to 5 months that I've got a good network. So like most of the people I'm getting on my podcast, they are people from LinkedIn, and they've done some tremendous work in the public policy and in the research domain. So I feel LinkedIn has also really helped in that.
that is true.
Yeah. Okay, so like this should be the last question, but I want to know like which fellowships should one approach after their graduation if they want to get into this public policy domain and this particular field.
Okay. Um, okay. Do you want me to name fellowships like?
Yeah, like anything, like what should one do after graduation for this
All
particular
right.
field?
So most probably, if you're graduating and coming to public policy, you either belong to some humanities course, political science, sociology, something like that,
Hmm.
economics, even psychology to some extent nowadays, or you were usually coming from a business perspective.
Hmm.
So in either case, I believe before applying to a master's in public policy, it's
Hmm.
very good to get some on the job training. So
Hmm.
be it in an institute, in a university, or a government, anything.
Hmm.
Getting on the job training is important. In India, the convention is you did your bachelor's, let's do the master's, and
Hmm.
if you're really cool, let's do the PhD as well. I
Yeah.
think this is where it needs to be slightly tweaked
Hmm.
after graduation. I believe on the job training is really important, working is really important, understanding public policy is actually for you, and the development sector is actually for you is really important. In Project Up, I've seen, even outside Project Up, I've seen a lot of people go on the field visit and they just feel nice. And feeling nice is something that will just come inherent because you're going down there. But can that be a career that you only come to know when you just don't go there to feel nice, but to actually do
Yeah.
something impactful? So that's there, and
So,
that's why I believe before getting into a master's and spending money on public policy, investing that money there, very essential is to work somewhere as maybe an apprenticeship or an internship or a fellowship like you mentioned. So, and that needs to be changed within the culture, the mindset.
yeah, in a country. Absolutely. Okay. So thank you so much, Vardhan, for coming on the podcast. I'm going to
Thank
get
you.
you more on the subsequent episode where we can discuss the nuances of public policy. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you, and my audience will get an insight into the world of public policy.
I
Thank you
hope
so
so.
much.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you so much.